Now, $15 minimum wage. Guys, this is one we can win. We can create public pressure. We're 100% right. Public opinion is on our side. Everybody, come on, let's go put public pressure on. And the Young Turks audience was wonderful. It wasn't me, it was them. They put tremendous pressure on Bernie Sanders to have that vote. And we found out who the 8 corporate Democrats are, who the bad guys are. Meanwhile, the right-wingers pretending to be left-wingers like Jimmy Dore, like, oh no, that wasn't my idea. That hurts my ego. I won't help. I won't ever help progressives when you might win. Okay, how about the infrastructure bill? Oh, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to tell you how progressives are still bad. But wait a minute. They're blocking the bill. Bernie said he's not going to vote for the bill. Shouldn't you use your mind and your judgment and say, oh, that makes sense and that doesn't based on the facts? No, because their intent is not to help progressives. Their intent is to destroy progressives. Meanwhile, if you care about progressives, yes, you should put public pressure on them when it makes sense, when it's doable. And it's not because you hate them. It's because you're being an ally saying, trust us. If we work together, we can create enough public pressure on issues like $15 minimum wage. And yes, eventually Medicare for all. Of course, I desperately want Medicare for all. And by the way, no, they're not fighting hard enough on that. But yes, on the infrastructure bill, they are fighting. And so let's encourage that. Let's head in the right direction so we're not just destructive, so that we're constructive, so we can pass these bills. Guys, I got to say one more thing. This is not about us. There's the $15 minimum wage affects 30 million Americans. It would double their wages. It's $92 billion on the line. It's either going to go to corporate executives or it's going to go to working Americans. So put aside everybody's ego. God damn it isn't about your ego. Whether you're in Congress or you're a talk show host. We got to get those people help. We have to get them help right away. And yes, the Democrats always intended to betray them, and they did. That's just a fact.
We're right now in a moment where the number one Republican priority, if you were to turn on the TV and just check out what folks are talking about, are these bizarro kind of culture war issues, critical race theory, whether or not Mr. Potato Head is one gender or another. Like it's this
or
kind
another.
of absurdity, right? and they're good at it, right? They're good at distracting Americans of all political stripes, including conservatives, who I got to tell you are also struggling with healthcare concerns, are also struggling with the pandemic, are also struggling in the exact same ways that, you know, their compatriots across the aisle are struggling from thinking about those kinds of issues and instead prioritizing culture war issues that have absolutely nothing to do with how they're going to live their lives, how they're going to make sure their kids have an education, how they're going to be able to afford healthcare or keep a roof over their heads. And I think that sometimes Democrats need to not be so poll tested, although the polls are on our side on this one, not be so wedded to poll testing and instead have confidence that the ideas they're promoting are going to change people's lives. And if you enact them and people feel and experience them, you're going to be able to avoid some of the negative political consequences that typically follow winning a majority, winning the White House, which is typically you lose the House and the Senate. The only president who broke that trend was FDR. And I would argue that it's because he was actually able to very quickly enact policies that people could feel in their homes. Therefore, they decided, oh, this is a party I want to stick with. This is a team I want to stick with, and continue to vote, for Democrats through the midterms and, frankly, until the man died.
So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said recently that she suspected that a decent amount of the opposition was being framed around partisanship, but was actually around those campaign finance reforms. You know, the bill includes matching funds, which would not eliminate big money, but it would allow small money to compete on a slightly more level playing field. And there would be a lot of disclosure elements where big donors would no longer be able to anonymously contribute to these to campaigns or to super PACs or to other dark money groups. Do you agree with her that the opposition is claimed on the basis of partisanship, but actually is related to this kind of pushback against corporate money?
I agree. A lot of the opposition is coming on the campaign finance reform proposals, and they're brilliant. And the reason they're brilliant is they're constitutional. The Supreme Court under Buckley v. Valeo has said you can't actually restrict individual spending. So you can't restrict a billionaire from spending his own money. You can't restrict unlimited, unfortunately under Citizens United, independent expenditures. So what did we do with the idea of Bruce Ackerman and others? We said, well, okay, if you can't restrict it, you can dwarf it with making every voter a donor. There's about $6 billion of big money spent in this country, and you can dwarf that and say, let's actually have 6 to 12 billion of little dollars that actually will restore our democracy and is constitutional. And that idea is deeply threatening to powerful people in this country because they've seen it in practice with Bernie Sanders and AOC, and they say, wow, they figured out a scheme to make it constitutional, and that could erode our power. So I absolutely agree with her. And frankly, that's why I'm even suggesting that if you want to take those more controversial parts and fight that out, fine, let's at least get the voting rights part passed through law.
Ryan, do you have a follow-up question on that point?
Are there talks in that direction? Do you think that this could be something that they do? And if you cleave the voting rights parts out, could you actually then just kind of slide them into the John Lewis Act? You know, Manchin has said that he supports the John Lewis Act. So, okay, fine. Let's take Title I of the For the People Act and include it in the John Lewis Act, and so we can still call it the John Lewis Act.
That's a great question.
And John Lewis himself actually wrote most of Title I of the For the People Act.
That's a great point, Ryan, and I'd be open to that approach. And I think those are the type of approaches that we need to explore, because this is not a point of just having a win on messaging or making a point on television. We actually have to get this passed. I mean, it's about fundamental rights. And if that's an interesting way of doing it, I think you could get support, and I think the president could play a big role with some of these senators to convince them to get behind that.